Dam building is an ancient concept known to exist from as early as the 1st and 2nd century, and for basic functions like irrigation, flood control, and electricity generation during the last century. However, dam failures in history have also left a heavy human toll and a trail of destruction. The defective works that were bubbling below the radar during the construction of Uganda's 183 megawatts Isimba hydropower dam came to surface last month on August 8th, following a flooding incident that occasioned its shutdown for 2 weeks, plunging parts of the country into darkness. Uganda Electricity Generation Company Limited convened its teams of engineers from Owen Falls, Chira and Karuma dams respectively to work frantically to restore Isimba, which was no mean feat. However, it has since emerged that Uganda Electricity Generation Company Limited and its supervising Ministry of Energy continue to paper over the cracks as there is an imminent threat the 2.2 trillion shillings plant remains under strain of major defects, some categorized as high risk, as experts warn that there is a need to hastily avert a looming disaster. The most alarming defects are the crumbling concrete below the spillway gates. Isimba has 4 spillway or waterway gates. A spillway gate is a raised adjustable gate to allow controlled release of water downstream whenever water levels in the reservoir, the large lake behind the dam, increases, including the probable maximum flood. The water for generating electricity is released through different penstock gates which are underground. The spill water flows down with distinct force, so the concrete foundation must be rock solid. Not so in Isimba's case.
Outstanding defects, which the contractor is still remedying. And on that occasion, when the powerhouse flooded, indeed the contractor was in the process of remedying the defects. And we have also established that the contractor is also thin on the ground. As a result, he had also to rely on the operators of the system to support him in creating access for him to remedy one of the defects. So the flooding was more to do with the methodology of work.
EGCL staff have been engaging, especially on finding out how the snags and the defects which have been identified over the 3-year period, how they can be worked on. But there are some of them which actually we feel as a team of technical people that these should be addressed very quickly. We have heard and we have seen that there are issues to do with the spillway. The spillway is where the excess water is allowed to go through, and it's a very important structure on a dam. We have seen that there are some defects which, if they are not handled very quickly, could antagonize or have some deleterious effects on the dam.
Engineers are also questioning the structural integrity of the embankment, the large concrete wall barricading the reservoir on which the spillway gates sit and which forms part of the 10-story dam house that includes the powerhouse and offices. In case the embankment bursts, it could cause destruction of the entire dam, wrecking everything around it, including submerging surrounding homesteads and disastrously flooding the 600 megawatts Karuma dam upstream at the parallels of Oyam and Kiriandongo districts. The defective concrete spill or waterways, according to one Uganda Electricity Generation Company Limited report seen by NTV, are among the 10 major flaws categorized as high risk. Other major defects, all categorized as high risk, are cable rectification requiring extensive replacement, project documentation requiring improvement of the quality of and submission of operation and maintenance manuals, powerhouse roof requiring to replace panels and install guidelines, water weed and debris management system requiring supply and installation of a barrier system to trap weeds, and commissioning of a firefighting system needing design review of recommissioning of design systems, among others. Uganda Electricity Generation Company Limited, which inherited the project in 2016, says it identified 776 defects, of which 98% or 762 and 72% or 495 out of 690 notified defects have been closed so far. I quote, "However, many critical snags or defects are yet to be addressed and closed out by the engineering, procurement and construction EPC contractor," end quote, one Uganda Electricity Generation Company Limited report indicates.
We would like to welcome the Honorable Minister.
The Uganda Electricity Generation Company Limited Chief Executive Officer Harrison Mutikanga, in a June 30th correspondence to the Energy Ministry Permanent Secretary Irene Batebe, specifically raised red flags on the crumbling waterway concrete as of great risk to the overall stability of the dam, with possible catastrophic consequences. I quote, "Uganda Electricity Generation Company Limited considers this to be of paramount importance, as any delays to correct these failures only serves to increase the likelihood of these risks materializing and exposing government to great financial and reputational risk," I end quote, Mutikanga wrote. At the behest of Works and Transport Minister General Katumba Wamala, a team of engineers from the Uganda Institution of Professional Engineers and Engineers Registration Board visited the dam early this week on Monday. They unraveled more fault lines at the dam.
I think in the design of this dam, the designer, who happened to be both the designer and the contractor, didn't put much emphasis on the operations, because we did notice when we went down in the units that actually what was being done there, what caused the flooding which happened a few days ago, was that they were providing access for maintenance works. And we have seen a number of things. We went down to the spillway and we saw very simple things like steps that people can walk on that are very steep. That makes access very difficult. We've even seen on the reservoir, we've seen that the water hyacinth, this is a plant which can have serious damage to the plant. We've seen that there was no provision for this to be removed before access to the dam. So I think what we have advised is that the contracting agency, who is the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development, should make it a point that the contractor, during this defects liability period, handles all the snags that have been identified. There were, I think, over 700.
It is difficult to understand how, in the circumstances we are in, that the contractor is still thin on the ground. We think that this is not the best way, and the stakeholders, the employer, should make it an effort to exert more pressure on the contractor to mobilize adequate capacity, not just staff, but also adequate expert capacity to come and remediate all the outstanding defects and minimize reliance on the operator's staff.
The material quality control of materials was not done properly. The contractor was testing the materials in his laboratory, and the engineers who were supervising him just signed. There was no independent take of the materials to a laboratory like the Ministry of Works, which could enable the government to be assured that what the Chinese are doing is correct.
Uganda Electricity Generation Company Limited officials declined to comment on the story, but the company defends that it was handed supervision of the dam when its situation was out of hand. Initially, the Ministry of Energy supervised the works at Isimba and later handed to Uganda Electricity Generation Company Limited. Energy Ministry officials are now accusing Uganda Electricity Generation Company Limited over attempting to cover up their incompetence, while the engineering, procurement and construction contractor, China International Water and Electric Corporation, which had for the most part remained reluctant to fix the flaws until last month's flooding accident, blames both Uganda Electricity Generation Company Limited and the ministry. Highly placed sources told NTV that during a stormy meeting over the matter on Wednesday at the office of the Prime Minister, attended by senior government officials from the Ministries of Finance, Energy, Works and Transport, it was resolved to escalate the crisis to the project funders in Beijing, China. But how did we get here? It started with the tainted procurement process for the construction of Karuma Dam in 2011, which was rocked by graft as senior government officials and commission agents filled their pockets with bribes. When China International Water and Electric Corporation, one of the 6 bidders, lost the Karuma tender, it was handed Isimba to placate Chinese officials who had spent funds on the false premise that they would be given the deal. The bruising fights spilled over to the Energy Ministry and Uganda Electricity Generation Company Limited over the lucrative supervision of the Karuma and Isimba dams, which cost a combined $2 billion. Between 2016 and 2017, the Daily Monitor published detailed exposés into these fights, which sucked in several officials, including President Museveni, and exposed in action on claims of shoddy works since 2013, when the construction commenced. Investigations by an ad hoc committee led by Professor John Stanley Senfuma, commissioned by the Energy Ministry to look into shoddy works and claims of negligence by the contractors and government officials, painted a grim picture. I quote, "The contractor is using mild steel rod or ties instead of coupling, which are being cut at the concrete surface. These exposed mild steel rods and ties will lead to corrosion in the future. The contractor has used concrete of inferior class in areas where it is likely to cause cavitation or voids and scoring or wash off or erosion of abutments," I end quote, the ad hoc committee report read in part. On Monday, the engineers' bodies advised that immediate action is required to avert a looming catastrophe.
4 years after the project has already been running, now you are seeing the defects, like that water which has been washed from down there, degraded, the concrete has degraded. It could be because of poor quality. That one you cannot now rectify it. I mean, like, you can't go backwards 4 years. Now you have to find money to take action and repair the poor quality work which was done. I'm not saying it's poor quality. These people have first to test it from their own external laboratories, as I recommended. And when they have done the tests, then they can put an accusing figure and say maybe it is the contractor who did a poor job. But you see, they allowed the contractor, then the consultant allowed that situation to go ahead. Never should something be done by one person and then you rely on it. The contractor tests, gives you the results, you just endorse them because the contractor says the results are correct. You should have taken the material and done an independent testing, like say the Ministry of Works, and then you can ascertain whether the Chinese are doing it correctly. So
some design features which could make the dam operate better and also reduce on its risk features, that these are done as a remedy to save this dam, because if action is not taken early enough, then it might be very costly to have this dam operate to its full maximum capacity.
There is evidence which indicates that inferior materials have been used for a number of years.
We just did in February this year, 2022. But that's now 4 years after the work is already done. We're just doing an environmental audit. That should have been done at the time of construction, where the contractors should have been checked that they are doing the thing correctly. Quality control was a major problem.
Dams fail due to structural deficiencies in the original design or by external events that trigger conditions that exceed dam capabilities. The previous dam failures around the world have been investigated and theories advanced to prevent repeat of the same mistakes. While Ugandan government technocrats continue to act as if obvious to this history, it is worth noting that the beleaguered Karuma and Isimba dams were constructed using borrowed money under some of the stringent conditions that place the country under debt bondage.